So it's been a while, and I've had many failures, but I think I've got something. When I first started casting with all of these castable resins, I was having a really hard time getting them to cast right. So the whole challenge I've been having with it is, in order to get good results, I had to do the whole process back to back, and that was something I just could not do. So I had to change everything. So right now I work a full-time job, and in order for me to get my casting done, I had to do it on the weekend, and that just wasn't flying. So I started playing around with a bunch of different ways to break up the process over a couple days. And after a bunch of trial and error, I was able to get a process down and make it work. Now in this video is my third time replicating my new process. It's been a game changer. Now it took me a little while to be able to get this Siraya blue to melt into the sprue. I think in my next designs I'm going to change the sprue so I could drill a hole into it and then just plug each piece into the sprue. So this wax spruing machine got used on eBay. The guy said it worked great, but it turns out there's a short in the wire. So when I'm using it, it'll start to cool down and then heat up depending on how I'm holding it. So it makes it a little challenging. I think I looked up the handle and wire for the spruing machine, and it's like $100. So this is just gonna have to do for now. If anybody has any tips on how to get these to sprue better, please let me know, because I'm having a hard time getting these to melt. So I think it's going on 2 years since I started on this journey, and I've never had more fun doing anything else in my entire life. If you enjoy this type of content, hit like and subscribe. I'm getting so close to the 8,000 subscriber mark, and I could not be more thankful for all of you. The spruing is now complete, and I'm now attaching it to the base of the flask. Right before I threw it on the base, I put it on the scale to get an accurate weight, so I can calculate how much metal I need for the casting process. Now I played around with a bunch of different ratios for investment, and I was able to get a thicker ratio to work because I was able to find a way more powerful pump on eBay. The pump that I was using was not strong enough to be able to mix the investment as thick as I needed it. Now the reason I needed such thick investment is so that I can do a rapid burnout. Right now I'm wrapping up the flask in tape so I can seal it so that none of the investment will leak out the sides. I've been pretty fortunate that none of my flasks have leaked on me yet. If anybody knows of an easier way to do this besides using tape, please leave a comment down below, because I'd like to know an easier way. When I start casting with a whole bunch of flasks, I think the tape will be something that's going to take a little too long, and I'd like to cut that down. Now the flask is all ready to go, and I'm going to start mixing the investment. Now being safe about all of this is extremely important, so I try to have everything ventilated because the investment powder is extremely cancerous. Everything I do is documented, and I make sure to do everything as safe as possible. Right now I'm just going over everything in my head to make sure I have everything set, to make sure I can go through with it step by step and nothing goes wrong. That timer I have on the right is something I got on eBay so I can keep track of how much time has elapsed during the mixing process. Now I'm pretty confident that everything is set in place, so I just check to make sure my camera is recording, and I mix the investment. Now if you don't mix a thick enough ratio for a rapid burnout, it could cause cracks in it because of the moisture. Now the silicone bowl is definitely pushing the limits of what it can hold. I've been on the hunt lately for a larger silicone beaker that would still fit in my vacuum chamber. But I do also have a very large vacuum chamber that I haven't used yet. So I might end up switching over to that when I start casting many flasks at once. Now I have the investment poured into the water. Water always goes first. I set my timer, turn down the ventilation, and here I mix away. I always think it's kind of like an adrenaline rush when you're doing the mixing and the investment, because if you mess anything up, you have to start all the way back at the beginning. One of the reasons why I like using these silicone beakers is because I can squeeze it while I'm mixing it to make sure that everything is mixed thoroughly. I think it's important to have a timer when mixing investment because it's easy to get carried away when each part of the process can only take a minute or two. At this point, I feel like I've mixed it thoroughly, and now it goes onto the vacuum table to degas it. I'm still trying to work out all of the little kinks to speed up the processes. The last time I ran a cast, I had that beaker too far back in the vacuum chamber, and it overflowed a little bit. Now I don't know if other people do this as well, but I constantly release the vacuum pressure to make sure that it doesn't overflow in the vacuum chamber. And I watch the investment, and as soon as it gets to the point to where the bubbles are starting to flow, that's when I know it's ready to pour. Someone left a comment in a previous video to not shake the vacuum table so vigorously. So I've been trying not to shake it as much as I used to. After the first degassing, I pour it into the flask, and I like to pour it to where it's right over the bottom of it. When I had my last vacuum pump that was much smaller than this one, I think it wasn't degassing the investment as well as I needed it to, since it's mixed at such a thick ratio. After the investment gets poured into the flask, it goes on for a second round of degassing to make sure there's no more oxygen in the investment. If the investment is not degassed enough, you'll get little air bubbles that stick to your pieces. The flask has now been in the oven for about 5 hours. I have it set on a 5-hour burnout, and then an hour time at the casting temperature to make sure that the whole flask is at the casting temperature. I read online somewhere that the metal has to sit at the casting temperature for about 10 minutes to make sure that it is fully molten. Right after I pull the flask out of the oven, I use my air gun to give it a couple bursts up inside to get all of the ash out of the flask. Now that blowgun that I bought has a valve on it, but it's not very good, so I had to put a second valve on the blowgun to be able to turn the air down enough to not damage the mold. I feel confident that I got all of the ash out of the inside of the mold, and I'm ready to pour the metal. So the next step is I turn on the vacuum pump and make sure that we're pumping a good vacuum before I pour the metal into the mold. Now when I'm pouring this molten metal into the flask, it has to be in one fluid motion, otherwise there'll be breaks in the tree and the pieces will be jumped. Someone online told me that after you're done pouring the metal, you want to make sure that it sits under vacuum for a few minutes. So I let it sit there and cool down before I release the vacuum. Now it has cooled down to where the button is not glowing anymore, and I knock off the little bead of metal that's sitting on the button, and we're ready to quench it. The quench has to be one of the most satisfying noises I think I've ever heard in my life. When quenching, you want to make sure it stays under the water until it's done making noises. Right now, I'm crawling out of my skin, and it's the moment of truth to see if all of my hard work over the past couple days was worth it.
Oh yeah! Yeah! Perfect!
It was a success, and I could not be happier. This is the result. There are a couple very tiny defects, but it came out way better than I could have ever imagined. When I start doing full production, I will be cleaning all of these up and sanding them down before the casting process to get rid of the lines from the printing. These two pieces will be the first time I'm doing enamel. I've studied for a while and I'm extremely excited. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.